priests 100,000 cows on behalf of each of them. All of those cows had recently calved, and therefore they yielded much milk, and all of them had gold-plated horns. The emperor also distributed a vast wealth of gold and jewels to the thousands of rishis assembled in Mithila to witness the wedding. The 4 princes shaved their heads and dressed in silk robes, putting on brilliant, jeweled ornaments. Surrounded by the 4 handsome and effulgent youths, Dasarath shone like Lord Brahma, surrounded by the celestial guardians of the 4 quarters. A huge pavilion had been erected for the ceremony, a full 4 miles in diameter. It was supported on numerous gold pillars which seemed to rise up to the sky. Beautiful flower garlands were draped everywhere, and the air was filled with the scent of black aloe incense. Large stands constructed of mahogany, inlaid with coral and pearl, holding rows of golden seats, surrounded the sacrificial area. Kings from all around the world, along with their ministers, filled the stands, eager to see the wedding. The entire pavilion, with jubilant people, cried out, "All glories to Ram and Sita." Hundreds of elderly Brahmins, wearing simple loincloths, with clean white threads hanging from their left shoulders, were seated around the sacrificial arena. They recited Sanskrit hymns from the Vedic scriptures continuously, and the melodic rise and fall of their metrical chanting filled the pavilion. Musical instruments played while skilled singers sang the praises of Ram and Sita. The whole assembly appeared like an exuberant festival held in the heavens by the gods. Dasarath and his 4 sons approached the sacrificial fire, which was tended by Vashishta. When they were seated, the princes saw Sita and the other 3 princesses enter the arena. The minds of the 4 princes were captivated by the beauty of their wives-to-be. Adorned with shining silk garments, jewels, and gold ornaments, the princes appeared like 4 goddesses, descended from the celestial realm. They sat down opposite their intended spouses, glancing down shyly, and Vashishta immediately began the ceremony. King Janaka stepped forward, speaking in a voice choked with emotion. "My dear Ram, I now give to you Sita, my own beloved daughter, to be your assistant in all your religious duties. She will always remain exclusively devoted to you and will follow you like your own shadow. Take her hand in yours and accept her. I bless you both." Janaka took the hand of Ram and placed it over Sita's. Vashishta sprinkled sanctified water over their clasped hands, signifying the confirmation of the gift of Sita. Holding the hand of Sita, Ram led her slowly around the sacred fire. From the upper reaches of the pavilion, the voices of the gods were heard to exclaim, "Excellent, bravo!" Celestial flowers rained down upon Ram and Sita. The entire assembly of onlookers erupted with a shout of joy. Both Dasarath and Janaka looked with tearful eyes at the newlywed couple. Ram's complexion, resembling a celestial emerald, contrasted the pure white features of Sita. They were both covered with golden flower petals, and their many jewels shone brilliantly. As they walked hand in hand around the fire, Sita looked down in shyness while Ram smiled at the loudly cheering crowds in the pavilion. Each of Ram's 3 brothers, one after another in order of their seniority, took the hand of the other 3 princesses. Lakshman was united with Urmila, Bharat with Mandavi, and Shatrugna with Shrutakirti. The 3 glorious princes, holding the hands of their brides, went around the sacred fire along with Janaka and the many sages. Cries of happiness filled the pavilion. While the gods played their celestial drums, bevies of apsaras danced and Gandharvas sang. The sages loudly recited Vedic texts, and the blast of conch shells was heard everywhere. All those present in the assembly felt their hearts and minds deeply moved, and they were lost in ecstasy. The ceremony ended at midday, and the kings and princes gradually retired to their tents, headed by Dasarath, Janaka, and the 4 newly married couples. The following day, Vishwamitra, after taking permission from both Dasarath and Janaka, left for the northern Himalayan ranges, his mind intent on the performance of asceticism. Janaka bestowed upon his daughters a dowry consisting of hundreds of thousands of cows and an equal number of elephants, horses, chariots, and foot soldiers. The king, whose wealth was virtually unlimited, gave away millions of pieces of silk and cotton textiles, tens of thousands of hand-woven carpets, heaps of gold, silver and jewels, and hundreds of richly adorned maids for each of the brides. After a few days, Dasharatha left for Ayodhya, proceeding at the head of a huge army. As the emperor, surrounded by his sons and the host of sages, was travelling along the broad road that led to Ayodhya, he suddenly saw a strange omen. Birds began to cry out fearfully and swoop low over their heads. Witnessing this foreboding sign, Dasharatha's heart quivered and his mind became depressed. The king asked Vashishta if he knew the cause of those omens. "These signs portend some grave danger," Vashishta replied. "But here are groups of deer crossing our path from left to right. This indicates our deliverance from that danger. You should not fear." A fierce tempest blew up. The sun was enveloped in darkness and the sky became black. Huge trees crashed to the ground and the earth shook. A dreadful dust storm blew up. Dasharatha's soldiers felt their senses confounded. They were rendered virtually unconscious. Suddenly, from out of the darkness appeared the terrible sage Parashuram. He was dressed in tiger skins and had matted locks coiled at the crown of his head. The travellers immediately recognized him. Parashuram was famous for defeating 21 generations of the world's warriors in former ages. He had annihilated them by the millions. The sage had become enraged when his father was killed by warrior kings, and he wreaked an awful vengeance. Parashuram had then ranged the globe and massacred the entire warrior class. He now stood before Dasharatha holding a huge battle axe in one hand, and in the other a fierce arrow which resembled a streak of lightning. He was as tall as 2 men, and he had upon his shoulder a massive bow. Appearing as irresistible as the fire of universal destruction, he blocked the path like an unassailable mountain. The sages and Dasharatha's party quickly gathered together. They took water to wash Parashuram's feet and hands and offered him gentle words of welcome. Accepting the honour offered by the sages, Parashuram looked at Ram and said in a grave voice that rumbled like thunder, "O Ram, I have heard of your strength. By breaking Lord Shiva's bow, you have performed an incredible feat. How can I, who has formed a great enmity with all warriors, tolerate hearing of such prowess existing in a king? I have here another sacred bow, the bow of Lord Vishnu. Let us see your power now. Fit this celestial arrow upon this bow, and simply draw it to its full length. If you are able to accomplish this task, then I shall challenge you to single combat. When you stand on the battlefield and are swept away by the force of my weapons, you shall earn undying fame." Dasharatha, upon hearing the challenge, became miserable. Knowing of Parashuram's power, the king feared for Ram's life. He approached the sage with joined palms and entreated him to spare Ram. Paying no heed at all to the king, Parashuram continued to speak only to Ram. "Both the bow broken by you and this one here were constructed by the architect of the gods Vishvakarma. The one now sundered by you formerly belonged to Lord Shiva. This other one was the property of Lord Vishnu. Thus, this bow is even more powerful than the one you broke, for Vishnu is always the superior of Shiva." Parashuram took from his shoulder the mighty bow of Vishnu. With his brows furrowed, he gazed at Ram with bloodshot eyes, not immediately recognizing the prince's divine identity. "The bow has been passed down from Vishnu to my ancestors and finally to me. I now offer it to you, O Ram. Considering your sacred duty as a warrior to always accept a challenge, exhibit now the strength of your arms." Parashuram held out the enormous bow. Ram, smiling slightly, stepped forward. "I have heard of your tremendous feat in fighting and killing all the world's warriors 21 times. You have fully avenged your father with this commendable action." Even as a child, Ram had been told the famous history of Parashuram. The many kings killed by that sage had become debauched, and it was by divine arrangement that they had been annihilated. As a sage, Parashuram had performed much asceticism and had finally been personally empowered by Vishnu himself. It was by dint of Vishnu's own desire and power that Parashuram had been able to exterminate the warrior class. Now Vishnu, appearing as Ram, again stood before the sage. He continued to speak. You are a Brahmin sage and are therefore worthy of my worship. However, since you despise me, seeing me to belong to the warrior class, I shall now display to you my personal prowess. He quickly seized the bow along with the blazing arrow from Parashuram's hand. He strung the bow in an instant and drew the arrow back to his ear. Looking at Parashuram with eyes red with anger, he asked, Where shall I discharge this deadly shaft, O sage? As you are my superior, I dare not aim it at you. Hosts of gods had assembled in the sky. Seeing the celestial bow drawn in anger by Ram, and fearing that he may destroy the heavens, they cried out, Vishnu, save us, save us! Ram, standing with the bow, blazed as brilliant as the sun, and Parashuram fell back in astonishment. He felt his own power completely eclipsed by Ram. Immediately realizing Ram's identity, the sage spoke in faltering tones. You appear invincible, and I can understand that you must surely be the imperishable Lord Vishnu himself. I accept defeat, but I am not shamed, as you are indeed the Lord of all the worlds. Parashuram recalled how Vishnu had long ago said he would come again to take back the divine energy he had given to the sage. The warrior sage folded his palms and said, O Ram, O all-powerful one, you have already divested me of my power and my pride. Please release this arrow upon my desires for heavenly pleasures, and therefore burn them all to ashes. I wish only to serve you. With all my material aspirations destroyed by you, I shall be fit to become your eternal servant. This is my deepest desire. Parashuram bowed low before Ram, who then fired the fearful shaft. The sage immediately vanished along with the arrow. Then Varuna, the god of the waters, appeared, and Ram gave him the celestial bow to keep on behalf of the gods. The exchange between Ram and the sage was heard and understood only by Vashishta and a few other spiritually powerful Brahmins. The king and the others present had been wholly confounded by the events that had occurred. They were amazed and relieved to see that Ram had somehow appeased the sage. Everything again became calm, and the party resumed their journey, soon approaching Ayodhya. Word had already reached Ayodhya of the approach of the emperor's party. Thousands of Brahmins and citizens had come some miles out of the city to greet them. They stood along the wide roads, throwing rice grains and fresh green leaves in front of Dasharath. Seated aboard his great chariot, the emperor and his sons waved at the people. They moved slowly through the crowds and entered the city in state. It was decorated with flags and festoons, and strewn all over with heaps of flowers. Trumpet fanfares sounded, and joyous people thronged around the king's party as it went slowly along the main thoroughfare. Dasharath entered his own white marble palace, which vied with the Himalayan mountain. He was greeted by his wives, who had organized a ceremonious reception for their sons and new daughters-in-law. After the greeting, the princes and princesses went to their respective palaces and began to enjoy life in Ayodhya exactly like the gods in heaven. After a few weeks, Dasharath asked Bharat and Shatrugna to go to the kingdom of their father-in-law Kushadwaj, who himself had no sons. The emperor instructed the princes to assist Kushadwaj in the affairs of state. Along with their wives and a large army, Bharat and Shatrugna therefore soon left the capital and went to Rajagriha, the city of Kushadwaj. Hare Krishna.